It's the first time the Tech College has held a show and tell day of this size, helping more than 1,000 first-year students to find their way around. Gathering into small groups, a guided tour of the campus discovered the answers to a questionnaire given to each student, which in turn provided all the information needed about the college's subjects and facilities. Across the region, 25,000 students have already enrolled. That figure has jumped by 4,000 from last year. The numbers are expected to rise even further, reaching more than 38,000 by the end of the year. It's subjects like computer studies and secretarial skills that have attracted more students. And according to Regional Director of TAFE, Gordon Gilroy, it's all part of a well-planned operation.
Over a period of time, taken away our priorities from those courses that had fairly low numbers and put the priorities into the courses where there's been a latent demand and large numbers of students. So we've been favouring those courses which have a full class of 30 students rather than a class of 4 or 5 students. The 4 or 5 student classes we've combined, so they've had to come to one college instead of being able to go to a number of different colleges, or we've put them onto correspondence courses and the like. It's a matter of rationalising our resources. We've done that, we've got more students and we're using less resources.
Great. Fine.
Michael Winslow calls what he does vocal vision, and it's a rare talent indeed. The rubber face tells almost every tale, and the sound effects Michael produces conveys the rest of the story. Michael will tour all around Australia during his 6-week tour. When asked for a sample from his show, Michael was understandably subdued, but he eventually overcame his reserve.
There'll be some new things that I discovered while I was here in Australia. In fact, if you hang on a second, I'll show you. Just wait right here.
Don't go away. Sure.
This thing here was a gift. It was presented to me from the Meteor dance team. And it was very nice of them to give it to me, so I sort of figured I'd put your mic down there and I'll do a little music for you.
Since his last trip to Australia 8 months ago, Michael has appeared in 2 movies. One with the zany Mel Brooks called Spaceballs, and yet another Boys in Blue spoof, Police Academy 4.
Yes, we did it again.
I can't help it. They really wanted me to do that, and I wanted to see Larville Jones, continue on a little bit. So Police Academy 4 is the newest installment. This one is Citizens on Patrol.
Neighborhood Watch. Oh, good. They get to help us run the academy, too.
I think you'll like it.
Many of those who attended today's meeting have already enjoyed the hospitality that bed and breakfast accommodation extends. They want to return the compliment, but others simply enjoy meeting people. In Australia, the B&B service is run by a private operator, Adrian Webster. He says the advent of this type of accommodation will entice city people to holiday here.
We expect that the B&Bs here will be aimed at the domestic market, mainly people from Sydney, probably the older age bracket, people that want to avoid the crush at Christmas and come up here and enjoy the beauties of Lake Macquarie when there are not too many other people about.
It's been a day of dramatic and sometimes confusing developments. Public Service Association members revealed this morning that 200 severance pay packets had been made up overnight. At 10:30 this morning, union delegates approached management seeking a list of those 200 employees, which Acting General Manager John Gribble refused to supply. The Premier's Department was contacted by Newcastle Trades Hall seeking confirmation of an undertaking by Mr Unsworth that unions could intervene in the selection process to avoid discrimination and victimisation. The Premier's office referred the matter to Works Minister Brereton, who, according to unions, refused to intervene. Following this, a mass meeting of workers resolved to refuse to accept the retrenchment notices. The remaining 60 retrenchment notices were to have been withheld until Friday to allow work to be completed on the vessel in the floating dock behind me. Tradeshall Council Secretary Peter Barrack says the return to work decision emphasises the trade union's determination that the dockyard should survive and should prosper. And he said at a late afternoon press conference that he still feels the government is determined to close down the facility and was hoping for strike action to come out of today's mass meeting to precipitate that closure.
It would have appeared an ideal opportunity if the workers wanted to engage in industrial action and to reciprocate in a bloody-minded way like the management is to take action against that vessel. They chose not to and have undertaken to complete that on Friday, which will be 4 days ahead of schedule.
Dockyard management is expected to try and bring in outside labour to mail the retrenchment notices to their intended recipients. The Trades Hall would regard this as scabbing, and that bridge will have to be crossed when arrived at. Unions surveyed the workers and more than 50% indicated a preference to accept retrenchment. Trades Hall says any severance list should be based on this. In the meanwhile, Ironworkers delegate David Owen summed up the rank and file feeling.
So what happens in the morning? Well, we turn up to work as usual.
And you're confident the gatekeeper will let you in?
Well, that's up to management. We'll be here to do the work we're here to do.
The 140 employees issued with retrenchment notices overnight and today turned up anyway with other workers this morning and were admitted without fuss. A mass conference at 9 o'clock was followed by a delegation meeting General Manager John Gribble for talks for the rest of the morning. It wasn't until just before 1 o'clock this afternoon that Trades Hall Secretary Peter Barrack emerged from the dockyard to tell waiting newsmen of a breakthrough. That was that he'd convinced management here that the government, by its action over the last couple of days, was in breach of the Metal Trades Industry Award.
That there are provisions contained within the Metal Industry Award that require any employer who is using the Metal Industry Award to notify unions of their intent to retrench people. A list of those people should be supplied and the union's allowed to negotiate on that list.
However, this is a point later disputed by Works Minister Brereton's office. It says checks with the Public Service Board revealed no award breach, but while Mr Barrack talked of total solidarity, according to the Minister, 60 of those retrenched did take the money and go, like 48-year-old Neville Gavanlock, a union delegate who had been a machinist for 25 years. He described the mood inside.
Bit of anguish and bit of anger and so forth, etc. But all I'm told, I think the blokes have accepted that the government has done the dirty on us.
Derek Forward, also a machinist but only for a year, is a 21-year-old father-to-be, and he's worried about his chances of finding another job.
After working here and the reputation the dockyard's got, I'll never get a job again, I don't think, in the trade, which is going to ruin me because, you know, I've got a family to keep and everything.
Mr Brereton's office said late today that the appeal process after retrenchment has always been available to unions and that these latest talks are just part of that. The Minister reiterated that the retrenchments stand, and even if some of the retrenched men continue to turn up and work, they'll not be paid.
The general impression given at the press conference at the Newcastle Rugby League is that this city's bid to get a team into the Sydney Premiership is almost certain to come about next year. The NRL's application for 1988 is yet to be submitted to the New South Wales League. The deadline is the end of March, and although it was not openly stated by the State League's marketing manager, Graham Lovett, it seems that submission may be just a formality. The decision on whether or not Newcastle and also Brisbane get into Sydney will be made by May. Mr Lovett was certainly in no doubt that the inclusion of Newcastle next year would be a big plus for the Premiership.
We don't have any doubts about Newcastle. Given that they can come up with the initial viability, their potential amongst an area of 600,000 people, with the rugby league structure that you already have here and the juniors that you must be able to develop in the next couple of years, it must be a very strong consideration. And indeed it's very important to the rugby league that it's extended into the Newcastle area.
Also at the press conference, it was announced that Newcastle can wear the colours royal blue and regal red if accepted to the competition. Many factors will be looked at in the submission, but one that holds a deal of weight is that the team must have a solid financial backing. And in numbers, that means well over $1 million. How much money are we talking about for a team to be successful in the Sydney competition?
Varies considerably, but obviously the application will contain figures well in excess of $1 million.
And approaching $2 million?
Well, if you get close to $2 million, you're going to be more competitive.
The fire at the CW1 iron foundry at the Crossroads in Glendale broke out shortly after 8:30 last night. When 6 fire units from Cardiff, Bullaroo, Wallsend, Hamilton and Cooks Hill arrived, there was concern the blaze may spread to surrounding buildings. But firemen worked quickly to stop any possibility of that happening. The gas company was called in as a gas line was on fire at the entrance of the shed and sprayed a jet of flame into the air. Damage was limited to the 15 square metre shed, but that was destroyed. No one was injured in the blaze.
Well, it looks like it. The people that have know all about it said that he looks to be a goer, yeah.
What's his breeding?
He's by Prince Eckhart is the New Zealand sensation sire this year, and out of a mare called Kind Offer.
And Paul picked him out for you, and
Paul was he's the expert judge.
What about the run at Muswellbrook?
Well, he did everything wrong, Lee. At the turn, he was 10 wide and dead last, and we thought, well, there's no way he's ever going to come through. But the jockey gave him a smack on the backside, and away he went. Won easy.
For the lead, Hamagita going up behind those. Then came Double Bowl. Tundra Star is in midfield and getting well back in behind those. Then was Candida. Second last is Top Gallery and African Queen is last. There's only about 3 lengths between the first 8 of them as they come towards the turn into the straight. And out wide on the track here, Black Chariot has raced up to Ingrained and getting through on the inside there is Hamagita. And now getting a beautiful run through. Thompson's getting through on Candina nearer the inside. Tundra Star is also there and Royal Handout in the centre soon after got clear. Royal Handout's in front at the moment, running home well from near the tail of the field is Top Gallery. Royal Handout holding the lead, getting near home and it gets home. Royal Handout beats Top Gallery. Third is Candida. Fourth home Tundra.
What are you going to do with him now?
Well, he's in the KB slipper next Thursday at Gosford, and if he goes all right there, probably on at the Penfolds Classic and hopefully one better from there.
The Golden Slipper?
Yeah.
Now the KB slipper and the Penfolds.
Last year, State Minister for Police George Petullo set the huge target of 2,200 new recruits by 1988. And to reach that figure, the statewide campaign is continuing. In September last year, the department interviewed nearly 700 applicants from this region alone, but only 80 were finally accepted into the academy. The police say they know who they're looking for and encourage anyone interested in joining the force to visit the Newcastle Police Station this week.
We're basically after people who are between the ages of 18 years and 6 months to 13 years and 3 months. They have to have either the HSC with a certain aggregate or a trade qualification with a school certificate with a grade 3 English pass. Each application will be judged on its merits, so if there's any doubt about what qualifications you have, then come along and have a talk to us.
And you're starting tomorrow?
We certainly are, 8 o'clock.
The Lake Open Regatta brings together all the classes of sailing craft which compete on Lake Macquarie. From sailboards through to ocean racing yachts, they were out on the water laying their claim to the title of Lake Sailing Supremacy. The event usually comes down to a three-way tussle between the 16-foot skiffs from Belmont, the 505s from Toronto and the yachts from the Lake Macquarie Club. Conditions on the lake for the event were choppy and there was a healthy breeze. Rage of Our Town has easily won the event for the last 3 years and was one of the favourites going into the regatta. The Fred Williams-owned, John Moore skippered yacht is believed by many to be the fastest sailing craft in Australia. Big challenges came from the 16-footers, but in the end, Rage of Our Town made it 4 in a row after an eventful race. 16-foot skiff MJH, sailed by John Millward, came in second. Hello, I'm Matthew Clark. Several hundred first-year students turned up 1 week early at the Newcastle College today for Orientation Week. The students will learn the ropes of college life before courses begin next week.
Join Ray Deneen and Anna Manzoni for all the news tonight at 6.
The land the department intends to reclaim runs along the back of a number of deep blocks which front onto Marshall Road. The department says it needs the land to build a sloping wall which will form the edge of the western bypass. The department does not know how much land is needed until detailed designs are drawn up, and it's this uncertainty that is causing the residents concern.
Yes, it is worrying, because you work all your life, you want something for old age, you want something behind you, and you'll finish up square one again.
The residents say they are resigned to a structure being built, but they favour a vertical retaining wall which would use much less land, unfortunately at a much greater price. The residents say they also want to be consulted by the department. Yes.
Well, we haven't had any information from them. They haven't contacted us in any way, shape or form. It is a pity because, after all, we do need some sort of conversation with them to work out what's necessary.
The department says the residents knew land to the rear of their properties was reserved for roadworks, and at this stage that consultation would be too premature. Submissions have been sent to the department so far, the most they've received for any project. In Sydney, the controversial Harbour Tunnel scheme generated only 200 submissions. Each of the 3 options for the Wakefield to Minmi section of the F3 freeway has its opponents. Residents of Killingworth and Barnsley oppose the eastern route. The central route cuts through unmined reserves of coal. It's been criticised by mining groups. The western route has been condemned by residents of West Wallsend, Holmesville and Seahampton. Lake Macquarie City Council considered a letter from the residents at a meeting last night. The letter claimed plans for the western route, as outlined in the environmental impact statement, were inaccurate, incomplete and conceived in haste. The DMR will now process the submissions and send a report to the Department of Environment and Planning. It will decide if a public inquiry is called for. If not, the DMR will get the green light to make a final decision. The whole process is likely to take at least 2 months, and according to the DMR, the final decision will be binding.
Number 46 Perk Street is an old house which has just been purchased by a developer. In recent years, similar old houses have come under the watchful eye of other developers, and neighbours say attached dwellings like these ones nearby have appeared overnight. The Walls End residents are concerned that more of the dwellings will be built, taking away privacy from adjoining households and limiting street parking. Adjacent to number 46 are vacant blocks of land, which the residents say make prime picking for the developers. At a council meeting last night, the proposal to build 5 two-storey attached dwellings in Perk Street was deferred until an on-site inspection by aldermen, developers and residents can take place next month. The residents say their only hope now is that the council will support them by rejecting the developer's proposal.
We just feel we could accept one, but no one can assure us that we're not going to have to accept more in the near future. We feel once one is approved and goes ahead, we just feel that it's just going to won't follow on one after another.
The bone.
In some orthopaedic operations, extra bone is used to line joints, and it's usually grafted from one area and then used on the other. But grafting processes can cause problems. It means the patient loses more blood and can suffer more pain after the operation. With the purchase of the $7,000 freezer, Lingard Hospital can now store bones for up to 12 months, and the sample can be used in a range of orthopaedic procedures. Because of the bank's freezing technique, nearly all bone matter stored will be compatible.
More or less, yes. There are cases where we don't use bone from one person to another. If the person has any particular disease or transmittable condition, then obviously the bone is not used.
Dr. Stephen Yang, a professor of thoracic surgery at West China's University of Medical Science, will consider establishing an anti-nuclear movement in China amongst the medical profession. According to him, no such group now exists. He said many people in China are very worried about the threat of nuclear war and were relieved when China stopped testing nuclear weapons 2 years ago. Dr. Yang and his wife Ruth, who is also a professor, have just attended a conference in Auckland of physicians concerned with nuclear issues. He said there was a loud and clear message coming out of the conference.
The main one, I think, is they try to urge the people in this area, huge area, Asian Pacific area, to work out an nuclear-free zone, and that, I think, that's the main issue.
Do you think that China could play a very important role in establishing a nuclear-free zone?
Oh, I think so. Yes, sure. I think the Chinese people like to take part in such a zone.
The Family Law Court building is rapidly taking shape. Because of the spate of bombings directed at Family Law Court judges in recent years, the Attorney General's Department has specified that this building be constructed with special security features. These include bulletproofing around the judges' benches, special separate lifts for the judges, and blast-proof glass in the windows.
There's all sorts of protections to protect their lives from actual bodily harm. The judge's bench has got bulletproof facings in the front of it, so as the bullet can't penetrate and hit the judge. If someone fires a gun in the court, the judge just drops behind the judge's bench until help arrives. There's duress alarms right through the building, so that people cannot get at the judiciary while they're trying to do their job.
family law is an emotive area, the building has been specially soundproofed. Architect Rod Seymour from Architect Snell said special consideration also had to be made to ensure the building's furnishings will be relaxing.
One of the main features of the building is the finishes within the building, the furnishings, the carpets, the paint colours. We've selected colours there that are soft, relaxing, and more related to home than to a traditional court building.
In the design of the bench, I noticed that the bench was...
The accident late this morning saw this yellow Ford Cortina career out of control on the highway, about 1 kilometre north of the Lakes Way turnoff. The car crossed onto the incorrect side of the road, slammed into the Armco railing, which then snapped. The free end penetrated the car from the passenger's side and pushed the front door right through the car's body. The car was left dangling precariously at the lip of an embankment. The passenger didn't survive the crash, but the driver, 65-year-old Alan James Drinkwater, escaped with minor cuts. He was taken to Bulahdelah Hospital and treated for shock and lacerations. Local police are very familiar with this section of the Pacific Highway. Known as Ashley's Hill, this corner in particular gets very slippery when wet. One theory being used to explain the accident was that the rear vision mirror fell from its mount, and in an effort to retrieve it, the driver lost control.
Rob, the old wheel, let's start with price, cost about $250.
That's right.
10 times, $2,500 for a push bike wheel.
That's right.
That's a lot of money.
It's a hell of a lot of money. They're worth it though, to gain that extra 1 second in 1,000 metres.
We were talking about Craig Chapman, who's now the New South Wales time triallist over 1,000 metres, the champ. You sponsor him and you're just about to give him this wheel that'll improve him 1 second.
Right.
That puts him in very strong contention for the Nationals.
That's right. He's already world class. This puts him, well, they're looking at differences of 1/100th of a second in world titles. So every little bit helps.
Certainly does. And I believe you went all the way to Tasmania to get your hands on this little baby.
Yes, I wasn't game to have it sent up in any way. It's just too risky.
Sure. How many of these in Australia?
6.
6. And the local boy's got one?
Yeah.
Where do we go from here? I mean, what happens now? This thing is straight out of space research, really, isn't it?
Yeah. In LA, we thought they had the bee's knees. This is 1/3 the weight, so it's even better again. Where we go in another 3 years' time.
It's so close, but to have one of these, you're just up with the blokes and it's back to training again, you know? It makes things equal again.
Psychologically, it gives you a kick too to know that you've got the best equipment, doesn't it?
Yeah, well, that's right. You've got to have the best equipment. If I didn't have this, well, it'd be no contest.
Just why this depression in medium to high cost housing has occurred is hard to pinpoint. The 1981 boom in housing seemed to be going to last forever, but of course it didn't, and prices fell dramatically. According to Fred Andressen from the Real Estate Institute, this fear of another crash is stopping most people with houses worth $120,000 and more from putting their properties on the market. They would simply lose too much money. He says, though, at this stage, that the market is stable. About the only section of the market that is selling quickly is the low-cost properties, $50,000 and down. Mr Andressen says this is because the shortage and thus high prices in rental accommodation is forcing people to look for alternatives. Housing construction isn't looking much rosier either. The Building Industry Association says the September statewide figures show a decline of 30%, but according to Frank Wotherspoon, Managing Director of the Newcastle Permanent Building Society, the figure in Newcastle could be as high as 40 or 50%. He says lending for housing is also down.
Our loans for this year, the full financial year, I believe, will probably be at a level about 20% less than last year. I don't see a lowering of interest rates taking place for 12 months from now. Had you asked me 3-4 months ago, I would have said that I believed that that was likely in July. Subsequently, I believe that everybody in the financial markets are of the opinion that there is no possibility of a reduction for at least 12 months, maybe for 12 to 18 months.
Each team played 18 games to get to the semis of the A-grade competition. Last night, the competition premiers, Austral, were the favoured side going into the final. But at game end, the score was 1-0 to Swansea Belmont. A small crowd turned out to watch the game played over 2 14-minute halves. With no offside, a smaller field and continuous play, the game is exciting for spectators.
The report released today compares the economic impact on Australia if the submarines were built in South Australia, Western Australia, Victoria or New South Wales. According to the report, $1 spent in New South Wales would generate more economic activity nationally than that dollar spent anywhere else. The figures quoted are over and above the actual project cost of $2.6 billion. It refers to the spin-off effect and has been calculated using the input-output approach most common in economic study. In simple terms, it works like this. A welder working on submarine construction spends his income on entertainment, housing, retail goods and services such as schooling for his children. His spending becomes a stimulus to other sectors of the economy and contributes to job creation and other people's income. The report by Dr. Jensen has put a numerical value on the multiplier effect of the project dollars spent in various states. It concludes that in the construction period, $1 billion more economic activity would be generated by a New South Wales assembly site compared with its nearest rival, South Australia. A further $600 million would be generated through the continuing maintenance and support facilities. The conclusions are explained by the fact that in New South Wales there are more opportunities to spend. This state's economy is more connected with a higher level of economic linkages. The report is a potent argument in favour of Newcastle's chances. The federal government has promised a decision on commercial criteria, and any boost to the struggling national economy must weigh in as a major factor.
With the Royal Swedish Navy. We were given an historic opportunity to
As the telethon marathon moved into its fourth and final day, runners were plying 4 different routes from throughout the Hunter to Newcastle. The team continuing the run from Gloucester made an early start this morning at Dungog. The path would take the runners through Patterson to Maitland and then on to Newcastle, and would pass through some of the region's prime dairy, grazing and timberland. The Dungog team included 4 female runners, with schoolgirl Sharon Scholes rated as one of the best cross-country runners in the state. Also today, the event would take to the water again, with water skiers carrying the baton containing the Prime Minister's message across a section of Lake Macquarie. Late this afternoon, 4 runners converged on Newcastle for the grand finale. For all the marathon highlights, including the finish